So on the previous slide, we said that tourists see no real issue between disease transmission from human to animal or animal to human. They just really don't think about it, and they're unaware of all of the potential issues that it can cause. But when ecotourism is done well, it can really help conserve a species. When it's done poorly, it is a direct form of human-wildlife conflict. One of the benefits of ecotourism is that it raises awareness, and it can lead to so many more beneficial effects. People seek out opportunities to have close one-to-one interactions with animals. They value those interactions greatly, and it educates people about conservation issues, about sustainability, about changing, crucially, our own behavioural habits. We shouldn't be using so much plastic. One of the key messages of ecotourism is that we should find sustainable ways forward. It encourages generally us to value animals and their ecosystem higher. A lot of societies, including our own, tend to traditionally devalue animals. There are livestock, there are production units, there are pets that we own, for example. But animals have inherent value. They have an intrinsic value just because they exist. They're motivated to survive, to live a healthy and sustainable life, and we should be motivated to conserve them, therefore. But unfortunately, that message just doesn't compute to a lot of people. And some people are really isolated from the natural world. They have very little to do with the natural world in their daily life, and they have little opportunity to learn more about it. So people seek out ecotourism opportunities, and that can lead to particular key benefits highlighted in the purple box. One of the key things about ecotourism is that it makes animals more valuable when they are alive rather than dead or as bushmeat, or the forest area itself being destroyed. Suddenly that area and the animals within it generate a substantial income. So for example, I've been lucky enough as a tourist to go to see mountain gorillas in Uganda, and it was a life-changing experience, even for a primatologist. If you ever get the opportunity, I would recommend going. In all of the forested environments around Uganda and Rwanda, they are incredibly responsible for their ecotourism. They do a good job of it. You have to, for example, maintain 5 meters distance between you and the gorilla. You are always being monitored. You are there to simply observe and then you leave. There's no direct interaction further than that. People pay huge sums of money to go and see gorillas for just 1 hour. I went years ago and it was $500 then. It's already, I think, up to about 800, if not $1,000 for an hour with a mountain gorilla. And that's if they tolerate you for an hour. If they only tolerate you for 5 minutes, then that's all you get. But people are incredibly invested. They seek out these opportunities, and it's a learning opportunity. It can really help enhance people's understanding of conservation need. But still, tourists don't understand that if ecotourism is done poorly, they actually are a detriment to those individuals and the population of animals as a whole, so that entire species and their conservation status. If done badly, ecotourism is a form of human-wildlife conflict. So at the bottom of this slide, we can see some examples of human wildlife conflict or ecotourism. And in the first picture with the guy in the blue t-shirt, for example, he's got a red howler monkey in his hands. And there's 2 problems with this for me. One is that he is handling the primate, and you should keep a suitable distance. The other is that that's an infant, and that primate should be with its mother and its entire family group. Red howlers tend to live in quite large troops, and where are they? That individual needs to be with those, not with that guy holding it in a t-shirt. The next picture we can see a lady with 3 tarsiers on her arms. Again, she's touching the primate. This is an additional concern. This is a nocturnal species. You can see up close how big the tarsiers' eyes are, like I was mentioning previously. And they're nocturnal, they shouldn't be awake in the daytime. This is the daytime. You are disrupting their natural circadian rhythm by hoiking them out of their nest and allowing them to interact with people. She looks blissfully happy, but she has no understanding of the consequence of those animals, both for the individual animal's welfare and the conservation of the species at large. We've got other examples of ecotourism, so guys trekking through the forest to see ring-tailed lemurs. The distance is maintained here, but it's the sheer volume of people that leads to encroachment on the animals' lives, because people then stop the animal from getting to the tree behind them, which is the one tree they want to get to and feed from or take shelter in and roost in for a few hours in the heat of the day. We've also got closer to home the Barbary macaques on the Rock of Gibraltar. People are forever wanting photographs with Barbary macaques in Gibraltar, and they have a really detrimental effect. You'll have probably seen on the internet lots of clips of Barbary macaques raiding people's pockets and their bags and stealing their camera, stealing their glasses. There's even been documented cases of some very bright macaques that steal people's phones and then barter with them to exchange the phone back in return for food. I did see a clip a couple of years ago of an individual who had the phone and was offered something like an apple and thought, no, you're not having the phone for that, I want a higher prize. So the guy had to then go and offer a packet of biscuits, and the monkey thought, no, okay, I'll take that. So gave the phone in exchange for the biscuits, but not in exchange for the apple. And it shows you the guy was laughing, he was happy, he was incredibly jovial that he was having this close interaction. But that type of mobbing behaviour by the primates leads them to trouble. So the Gibraltar authorities routinely cull the troublemakers in the macaque society. It's the brightest, boldest monkey that seems to adapt. They're doing what a monkey was evolved to do. They're evolving alongside their ever-changing environment to adapt to new food resources, things that they like the taste of and that lead to high energy for them. And the population is then decimated when those individuals are culled because they're seen as a particular issue. And that leads us to the next slide, because there is a genuine conflict here where animals actually attack humans. Thankfully, primate attacks are really quite rare, and people have been studying different populations of chimpanzees particularly for, in some cases, 60 odd years, with maybe only 2 or 3 known attacks to be documented. But there are attacks, and when animals are forced into situations where they feel threatened or uncomfortable, perhaps they're ill anyway, then they are likely to attack humans. We see that in different tourist areas, primate attacks increase, and as primates are provisioned with food, the rate of attacks increases greatly, because suddenly primates will tolerate a person looking at them, but when there is a food resource that everyone wants to compete for, then suddenly you up the stakes, and that means that primates will readily attack to be able to get to that food resource quickly. It is really very rare that a primate will attack and cause long-term damage, but there are known cases of children being killed, for example, infants being killed by chimpanzees. And that leads to an increasingly detrimental situation for the chimpanzee. It's awful that a person has lost their life or has been attacked or been damaged in some way and injured in some way, but it's also awful for the chimpanzee population. There is just less tolerance of that population. People go out of their way to build fences, to create barriers, and to cause even more conflict to the population. And of course, that just means that there's turbulence within the primate population as a whole, and there's unsettled hierarchies that then have to be fought and defended. So actually our actions tend to propitiate the problem. A pet primate lives a constrained life, and typically in the UK we see marmosets, so this individual here, in parrot cages living in people's front rooms. They have inappropriate diets, they have inappropriate environments, they have inappropriate social structures, so often primates are sold and housed in isolation, so as a single animal rather than a family group or with others of their own kind. They are often taken prematurely and weaned from their mother and then hand reared to make them tame, which doesn't actually make them tame. It just means that the primate has to seek comfort and resource from somewhere, so it will do so from the human that is prepared to look after it. And working at the RSPCA, I encountered many cases of primate neglect and not so much of the willful mistreatment of animals, but primates whose needs are not being met. It is incredibly difficult to meet the needs of a captive primate, any species, in any setting. And having worked as a primate keeper in a zoo, it is extraordinarily difficult to maintain a social group that is stable, functioning, isn't completely detrimental, where individuals get bullied and monopolised. And the primates are often fed an inappropriate diet, and consequently from all of this they are often in extremely poor health. So marmosets, just as an example, specialised gum feeders, they should be utilising trees in their environment where they gnaw out at the bark and then lap out the sap and the gum exudate from the tree. It's extraordinarily difficult to replicate that diet in captivity, and they also have a huge propensity to have dietary vitamin D. So they need UV and natural sunlight, they need a dietary source of vitamin D so that they can lay down calcium correctly in their bones. And one of the issues we see with pet primates in this country is metabolic bone disease. Their tail will have kinks in it, quite like the individual in this picture. They start to have a fused spine, a fused pelvis, they break their bones, they have restricted movement. It's agony, it must be agony. So there's pain, there's discomfort, there's distress. Being a pet monkey or a pet primate is not a great experience for any individual. I have to say I've come across a few individuals now in the pet industry, and I've never once met an individual where I think, yes, the needs of that individual are being met. So we put all of these things together and we can see that every form of human-wildlife conflict, no matter how removed from us or how invested we are in it, if it's us keeping a primate as a pet, if it's us buying furniture that's made from unsustainable sources, or if it's bushmeat that perhaps we don't participate in, all of them lead back to population decline. And you might think that this is quite an isolated example, but truly it isn't. Of all of the primates documented, and in 2012, 415 primate species had been documented by the IUCN Red List. 37 of them were critically endangered, 86 of them were endangered, and 78 were vulnerable. Every single member of the great ape family group, so a group which we are part of as human beings, is also now endangered or critically endangered. They are facing an imminent threat of extinction in the wild, but also in captivity. We could literally wipe out different populations, and in fact we already have. As a sad story, chimpanzees have their own culture, so each group of chimpanzees, they're the same species but they have totally different behavioural repertoires, and that is shown in the way that they make and use different tools. And in Nigeria, we had a small pocket of chimpanzees. There was a small population, there was not a lot, but they had evolved a unique culture for digging. So they made themselves spades and they would dig for roots and tubers in a really effective way. And that entire population has now gone. We have lost that genetic diversity and we will never get it back again. The group became locally extinct, and with it, so did their culture die. And they're lost forever from the chimpanzee population. And if we look at an entire case study now, then we see that all of these things are inherently linked together. You encroach upon a forest, you knock it down, you start building a monocrop, you get retaliation. So individuals, this chimpanzee looks absolutely dejected. It's skinny, its hair is falling out, it looks depressed, it looks like it's suffering. And people retaliate. They are annoyed that chimpanzees raid their crops. So they go and deforest even further. They keep even more individuals as pets. And it leads to a further decline in the population. It's a cyclical activity where we just devalue the animal, we devalue the natural habitat and the resources that we have available. So up until this point, it has been a very doom and gloom lecture, but thank goodness there is a solution at foot, and that is conservation. There are many different types of conservation activity that we can do to solve human-wildlife conflict issues, both those direct issues, the face-to-face issues between humans and animals, and the more dispersed issues of general population increase from the human side. We can, for example, protect wild animals in the environment that they are in. We can create forest reserves. We can guard animals like they do with mountain gorillas. You have armoured guards when you visit mountain gorillas, and they protect the animals at great cost to the individuals that do the protection. You can start breeding programs. You can take animals into captivity and start a genetic resource so that we have the genetic potential in zoo populations to be able to repopulate the wild at some point. We can take animals from a high human wildlife conflict zone and translocate them so that they are in a secure zone away from human populations. We can rescue individuals, we can rehabilitate individuals instead of huge groups of animals or in an actual community, for example, of chimpanzees or gorillas. We can protect habitat, so without actually looking at a particular species, we might want to conserve the habitat at large. We can change the behaviour that we perform. We can change our buying habits and what we would accept as consumers. Loads of us now know about palm oil production, and there is a push for people to buy sustainable palm oil and products that have only sustainable palm oil in it. Hopefully that will help conserve some of the orangutan population. I'm a little bit sceptical because I think the whole palm oil situation is so vast and it makes such a lot of money for an impoverished country that it's going to be a hell of a thing to try and sort out. I hope they do, because we need orangutans and we need their environments and all the diversity of plant life, of insect life, of other bird life, mammalian life that those forests support. So in every way we can take meaningful steps to reduce human-wildlife conflict. Here's a great example for you. So this is a Cyan gibbon, and they are becoming increasingly endangered in the wild. They are a very specialised type of gibbon or lesser ape. And this story, and you can check it out on YouTube, the video of how an individual that was taken from the pet industry, reared as a human child in a household in America, I think, went through a process of rehabilitation and then was successfully reintroduced into the wild. Reintroduction is very difficult from a captive population, and success rates are typically quite poor. The average success rate of a reintroduction program is just 35%. So for every 100 individuals that you reintroduce into the wild, then only 35 of them will survive. They are atrocious statistics, and it takes years of rehabilitation. What it shows you is the impoverished life that a pet individual has, and the propensity that they have to change the way that they live, because you have to endure years of being a pet and then go through years of being trained to forage for yourself, to communicate with others of your own species, to avoid danger and predators in an environment. And it takes years for a primate to learn that before they can be reintroduced. So it's a really nice success story. I hope you have time to watch the video and just sort of share the joy of having an animal being reintroduced into a natural environment. I said on the previous slide that the traditional and average success rate of a reintroduction program is just about 35% for primates. And I'd really like you to take a few minutes and just consider what would make a conservation project successful. What do you think is important for conservation to be successful? How will we change people's behaviour, their attitude towards animals and to ecosystems at large, and increase their conservation behaviours? Now you've had some time to think about what makes conservation successful, I hope you have put people at the centre of that, because this research article, which I can share with Joe if you would like to read, really found that people were what caused a conservation programme to be successful or not. You have to get people on board. People will need to fund it. People will need to construct the conservation programme, whatever it is. Maybe it's an education programme for local people. Maybe it is a farming initiative where you could farm sustainably and reduce the need for reliance on bushmeat, for example. Those sorts of things take years of planning. They have to have consent from many groups on the ground. They have to have meaningful ways of resolving the problem for the people. If you have used bushmeat all of your life for free, why on earth would you start paying for butchered, reared, farmed meat in a local market? And it's that type of situation that we genuinely have to overcome. So if you give people a meaningful income, if you give them meaningful opportunity, if you allow them to generate income, to have access to education for their children, if you give them access to healthcare, then they are far more likely to change their behaviour and to immediately stop utilising natural resources. One example of this is, again, mountain gorilla conservation, a kind of model of how to do it well. The people that protect mountain gorillas now used to be the people that hunted the mountain gorillas before the conservation and ecotourism project was set up. Those people used to go out and hunt individuals for food. They are extremely good at being able to track the animal through the forest. They understand the behaviour of the animal. They can predict the behaviour of the animal. They know where they are likely to find the animal, which is crucial when you have a group of tourists wanting to see them. So you can utilise their skill and give them an alternative income. The situation for those hunters is that, quite simply, the gorillas are worth more to them being alive, so they will actively invest their time in protecting those gorillas as long as they have an income stream. Well, that gives the gorillas security, the wildlife surrounding the gorillas and the habitat as a whole security, but it also provides security for the human population. The children of the hunters now get access to education, and the hunter's family get access to healthcare, and that improves the human population greatly. Okay, I'd like to leave you today with a task, but also some final thoughts. I really hope you see the potential in the conservation activity that is going on currently and that we can do in the future. I have painted a really dark picture of primate survival, and it isn't meant to depress you. It is a real life take on the issues that affect primate populations globally. But there is chance to make change. There are positive movements occurring. If you think about all of the changes we have made in the last 2 or 3 years about our use of plastic bags and single-use plastics, these are greatly positive moves for the environment and for our earth as a whole. Along with that, it will help to conserve species. There's lots of opportunity to get involved with conservation action, even from your own living room. And one of the scenarios I'd like you to think about is the ii here. Iis are really highly specialised primates. They're the only living example in their entire branch of the evolutionary tree. These are nocturnal lemurs, and you'll see the long digit on the middle finger of an ii. They live in Madagascar and they fulfill a woodpecker niche. So they tap along with their middle finger along a tree, and they listen with their very large ears through like echolocation for the reverberations that bounce back when they hit a hollow point of the branch. And when they get those vibrations back, they then gnaw with their specialised incisor-like teeth and then use this long finger, which has a ball and socket joint, so it's a bit like our hip. They can literally turn their finger all the way round 360 degrees. And they hook out any of the little grubs that have caused the hollow in the branch, and that's their main dietary source. It's called percussive foraging, so percussion as in banging like a drum. And they're really charismatic individuals. Now, unfortunately for them, in their native Madagascar, they're an omen of death, and the villagers believe that if you don't kill an ii on sight, then great despair and death will come to your entire village, so you must kill it and not let it get away. It doesn't help that they are nocturnal. They do look a little bit strange, but when they vocalise, they sound almost like a child screaming, and they have a very odd range of vocalisations. So this myth and tradition has really sort of built up over many, many generations, and it is really ingrained in the population. Not only that, then their habitat is being destroyed at a rate of knots through entire deforestation. So all of Madagascar wildlife is endemic just to Madagascar, and if they are lost from that island, they will be lost as a whole. There's no way that we could ever replace them. So the ii really represents to us an area of opportunity. These are primates, they are part of our own evolutionary tree. They are becoming increasingly endangered. In the wild, they are now in fragmented forest habitats. In captivity, they are extraordinarily difficult to breed because they are incredibly susceptible to the constrained way of living in captivity. Their welfare typically is not so good and their breeding output is very poor indeed. So once you've tried to mate individuals, then actually their output of breeding is very low compared to other lemur or primate species. And what I'd really like you to do is just think about this for a while and take 15 or so minutes and think of everything I've learnt today. What is the way forward in changing the way and conservation of this species? How do we interact with them? How could we change that interaction for a positive? Bear in mind what I told you, that it's not animals that are at the heart of a conservation programme, it's the people. And how will you improve the lives of the Malagasy people so that they start to value the ii? If you can come up with a way, then tell Jo. She can email me directly if you would like. I would be really interested in your ideas. I thank you greatly for listening today. I wish you all the very best and just try to remain positive. Although there are immense challenges facing all different types of wild population, from lots of different animals, right the way from the smallest animal to the most complex in the ocean and on land and in the air, then there are positive ways forward. We can make a huge difference, and hopefully you can think of some ideas just for the ii. Thanks very much. Take care.